If you'd come forward and please state your name and address. This is what we normally do at the council meetings. And then if you could ask your questions and keep the rambling down to a minimum, we'd appreciate it.
Jennifer Johnson, 1220 B Street, here in Baker City, Oregon. You guys answered all of my questions, but you happened to skip my daughter's question. She has 4 kids in grade school. How are you going to assure that our children are safe?
Well, I think you need to help us with that. And, the same way I'm trying to make sure my daughter's safe. I provide drinking water that I know is safe. I either buy bottles or I boil it. And, that's what we use in our home until I'm sure that, there's not a chance of getting sick. So it's all of our responsibilities to, I think, protect ourselves. We're going to keep providing water. We're going to try to get your trust back in it as soon as we can. But yeah, it's tough.
Another question I had is school going to start on time?
We haven't heard anything different, and I don't know why they wouldn't.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Have you heard anything different, Ben?
So we plan on start school regularly. We've already met as an administrative team to start to discuss strategies that we're going to have to put in place to make sure that your daughter is safe there. I think our business manager and superintendent met with our food service department person, and they have a pretty good plan in place now to prepare food in a manner that's going to be as safe as any resident commercial place in town. I'm pretty happy that we have a little time. We have a few weeks to get all these things in place, but we probably are going to rely on water bottles as well. So the schools are going to be able to provide kids good meals as well as water throughout the entire day.
Thank you.
My name is Jim Thomas, 1675 East Street here in Baker City. I actually have a couple of questions. One is, I was looking on the internet and saw that the city has known about this since at least December of 2009. Why was this not enough of a concern in 2009?
If you're asking about when we were required to do our first testing, it has been a law that we address
I'm
LT2.
talking about when the very first Cryptosporidium was found. That was as far back as I could find.
For April of 2010, we started doing our required testing for Cryptosporidium. Prior to that, they may have done a test back in the 90s, but I am not aware of those results or what testing was used. But in April of 2010 through March of 2011,
you might want to check the City Council minutes for December 8, 2009. That's where I found it.
Okay, we're trying to answer your question.
So the test results that we've certainly been talking about UV and needing to deal with Cryptosporidium since 2006 when LT2, the rule passed. Our compliance date for that LT2 rule is October of 2014. We received a 2-year extension from the state until 2016. But our Cryptosporidium testing took place between April of 2010 and March of 2011. Those results were looked at as a group by the state and helped us determine what level of treatment we would need to use for our UV plant. So the crypto testing that we did, we reported on, and we continue to report on every June to every water customer on your water quality report that each water customer has received. And so that went out to you, and you just would have received this June 30th, just for your information. And it restates, again, that the last time we saw Cryptosporidium, it says 3 of 24 samples from April April through March. And it lists that mean concentration of the calculated amount. So we reported that to everyone as recently as June 30th of this year, that cryptosporidium has been in our water.
And so for the second part of my question, why has that not been important enough to the city to be looking at getting a filtration system, getting something done before suddenly we've got people sick?
Well, I think that it has been looked at, and I think our council minutes would support the fact that we have talked about UV or working towards LT2 compliance. I know that's lingo that's not common to everyone, but LT2 is the rule that we're required to comply with. And we have been talking about LT2 compliance, and maybe Becky off the top of her head knows how many minutes that she has typed that it has that, but certainly we have been talking about it. All of those council meetings are public meetings, open to the public with published agendas, and so we have been addressing it as proactively as we can, and it has been talked about, you're right, since prior to 2010 when we did the testing, we had to explain why we were doing the testing, so we did talk about it prior to that.
Okay, I get the feeling that I've been danced around a little bit. My second question.
Here's what we know from somebody that's lived here most of his life. Cryptosporidium, Gerardia, all kinds of other things are in these mountain streams. Now, I've known that, haven't you?
I understand that completely.
Okay.
Bears live up there and they do what they do in the water.
Absolutely. And so we've known that there's a chance of that, but we've been drinking this water for 100 years. And as far as we know, we've never had an outbreak like this before, but possibly we have, and we just didn't recognize it. You know, we didn't have that smart doctor at the emergency room that recognized, you know, when 3 or 4 or 5 people came in with diarrhea that something's going on. And so I would really like to spend my time looking forward and figuring out how to make you believe that our water's safe and, you know, drink it without worrying. That's what I'm worried about, is getting this done and, you know, moving on.
Yeah, well, good luck moving on. My other question, and I wrote it down on the paper, and then those were set aside, and I'm glad of that, because I like getting up here and talking once in a while. But my question is, you said that the insurance has a no fault. Well, no fault or not, how prepared is the city for lawsuits that do come? And I can almost guarantee that they will, from people who got sick or have been scared to death about some of their family members. How prepared is this city to deal with a lawsuit?
Well, I'm the risk manager for the city. We deal with risk every day in the things we do, so we're prepared to deal with that. But you know, what I need to remind you of is, even though I'm the city, you're the city, and the way we would fund those lawsuits is with water fees. And so if we give away all of our water fees in lawsuits, or pay people for the damage that they've had at their business or doctor's visits, then we're not going to have that money to do this upgrade up here that we need to do. And we have to get that money somehow. We're either going to have to borrow it and, raise rates to pay it back, or, use the almost $2 million that we have in the fund to help install this thing. So we always have to be prepared for lawsuits because that's just how you manage the risk, but I hope that doesn't happen. We are in compliance with what the state requires us to do. I know that doesn't help if you got sick, but we are in compliance.
One of the things that has cropped up in this that the state health department saw really as curious is that it's It's, out of the 13 confirmed cases, 10 of them have been women and fairly young women. And I think that has to, it goes back to most of us here in Baker County, you know, on hunting trips and backpacking trips and things, we've drank water out of almost all these creeks, and we've been exposed to it in the past. And if you've been exposed to it, you actually build up a tolerance to this stuff. So a lot more of us were exposed to this than we actually realize. And one of the really, probably the best thing that came about in this is that St. Alphonse, when they send their samples into Boise to be tested, Cryptosporidium is one of the things they test for. It's not a very common test. There aren't a lot of places in the state of Oregon that test for Cryptosporidium in the stool samples. But because of that, we were able to find out in a very short time what the problem was. You can thank St. Alphonse for that. Name and address, please.
Milo Pope, 935 D Street, Baker City. I was on the council from 2009 through 2012. I want to ask Ms. Owen and Mr. Key if the following recitation of facts is true. In late November 2009, Michelle Owen prepared a memorandum for the council's consideration, explaining that the Federal Environmental Protection Agency is requiring the city to install water purification equipment that will protect against Cryptosporidium. Is that assertion correct?
I'm not sure about the date, but yeah,
We've already covered that.
I know you have, but I'm going to make a point. If I may, Mr. Mayor? If I may?
If you can get to your point.
I'll get to it. You gave Mr. Thomas an hour and a half. Well, not quite that way. Anyway, we took it up in November. We took it up several times later, and we had votes on whether or not to spend the money to install a UV system. And this gentleman's engineering firm considered, at the city expense, the various systems for purification that were available. And they recommended UV. And we voted several times. And the majority, led by Dennis Dorrah and Roger Bowles, always voted against it. Sam Bass and I were outvoted every time. We could have had this system in by now. Thank you very much.
Aside from what Mr. Pope is trying to get you to believe, the city is online to have it put in. The equipment has been put on order several months ago.
And the appropriate word is late.
And the equipment is all scheduled to go online 1 year before it is required by the state.
That's the extended time.